know. But essentially, an airdrop is essentially an organic marketing tool for the project, and it's a way to reward kind of like its early and most devoted users, right? So let's say you interact with the protocol or a project. These are all I kind of use these words interchangeably. Um, you know, a year or two before the tokens come out. Um, Mic super low. Okay. Da-da-da-da-da. Let me see. There's always something. Oh, okay. How about that? How about that? Is that better? I went to like the fourth dimension of mic settings in my PC. That should be better. Crank the input volume a bit there. Okay. Okay. So basically, you interact with the protocol early before they've had their token, and then usually they allocate some of the supply. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, good. Okay. Good thing for me to know another like a eighth setting I have to make sure I check ahead of time. But yeah, so interact with the protocol early. They essentially reward you as an early user generally for committing some sort of time or capital, right? Um, and then when they finally do have their token, whether that's, a year, 6 months, 2 years after kind of the minimum viable product has been in, the wild in circulation, they'll essentially allocate a percentage of their token supply, generally between 2 and 10%. It can be more. If it's more, it's usually over multiple seasons or months or years, right? And then those users who provided that time and capital early on essentially get allocated tokens, right? And that's essentially, dollar value, USD value. Um, and then usually like you sell it, right? Why do projects do this? It's a very strong organic marketing tool. Like, look how early I was to this thing. Look how much money I made. Get in on season two. It kind of incentivizes content creators to make informative, valuable content. Like, hey, I called this thing early. I'm farming this thing. This is how I'm doing it. I kind of build up my social credibility and, value to the space that way and become like like that's kind of what I did, right? I put out strategies, help people make money. I get like followers or social credit, authority, whatever. And I help people make money, and that's great. That makes me feel good, and I get to do the same thing. And it's essentially a marketing expense, right? So the airdrop space has changed a lot ever since kind of like the original Uniswap days. You essentially just have to be more strategic with your time and capital. So the way I basically look at airdrops is you're essentially taking a trade, right? Quote unquote, right? Meaning you have to commit some sort of time and capital to farming this thing. Generally, there's some sort of point system to see how you rank among other users. That could be internal facing. That could be internal facing or visually external facing that you can see, and then it's like, okay, what do I need to do to essentially position the top 20-ish percent, right? And how much time and capital is that going to require me to commit, right? And then there's also like asset exposure, right? So uh, basically all the airdrop farms we're going to be kind of covering today are going to be mostly stablecoin based. Um, just because people are looking for stablecoin opportunities. People want to hold and chill in stablecoins till like the market turns around or does better, right? Because let's say you're farming like an ETH-based airdrop, right? And you bought ETH at like 3K, um, and then or we could change, and you bought ETH at like 3K, like however far back. You're farming this thing for like 4 months or whatever, right? And now this thing hasn't TGE'd, but you're down, you know, 38%, whatever, right? So basically, like if you're farming with like an ETH asset or a SOL asset, you're subject to the price action of like that core asset you're holding, right? Um, Mario, if you're talking about the Puff Paw airdrop, if that's what you're talking about, reasonably bullish on it. I bought one of the vapes a while ago. They still don't have the app live yet, which is kind of wild to me, but Barachain's doing pretty well and the incentive flywheel's good. So, for like the 180 bucks or whatever I paid for the vape, it should pay for itself in the airdrop. So, because of that, we kind of don't want to, I mean, ETH's kind of like, pretty low right now in Sol. So, we're going to be going over mostly stablecoin farms. And then we're going to touch on like an ETH farm and then touch on a Solana farm as well. And then that's going to be kind of like the all-encompassing kind of what we're covering here. Um, Sorbo saying farming hyper EVM DeFi heavy right now. Would be curious on what you're doing, Sorbo. We could kind of touch into that one right now. So kind of one of the main compound hyper EVM playbooks or airdrops I'm kind of doing right now is essentially this Mizu Lab vault. Basically what you do is you deposit ETH or, an ETH related asset like an ETH LST. Like in my case here, I talk about CMETH because you can also get some points for kind of Mantle's meth protocol at the same time, but you could use any of the other related assets. But and we're trying to essentially balance on what is like we want something that's like minimal maintenance time, right? Because we don't want to be coming in and out checking this stuff all the time, right? Because we want to be spending our time doing other things, maybe trading when the market gets better, improving our health and sleep schedule in real life so we can ruin it all when the market comes back or gets better, that type of thing. So I like it. I'm looking at like basically deposit is what I kind of call TVL based farms or total value locked, which is like the money deposit in a protocol. It's like I want to deposit the money, get the points, come back in like 4 months, get my airdrop, and then like recycle in the next thing, right? And I don't have, and the maintenance time and like management is very minimal, right? That's the goal, right? So a lot of these are going to be like TVL or vault kind of based things. Um, so I think this one on Hyper EVM is pretty decent. So there's 8 tokenless protocols, and you could possibly qualify for future Hyperliquid airdrop since you're getting involved in the Hyper EVM ecosystem. At this time, which is around a week or two ago, they only had around 2 million TVL, and you basically deposit an ETH LST into this Mizu Lab vault. Um, and then I mentioned how you could use CMET to get cook and restaking rewards, but you can use another LST vault if you want. We can pull up the vault here quick. But essentially, 1 to 2% of the token supply from all of these Hyper Liquid ecosystem partners, Hyperbeat, Mizu themselves, Hyperland, Harmonix, Hyperfi, TimeSwap, Silhouette, Hyperswap, and you get Vita Labs points as well, which is kind of like the infra that's being used in the background um, as well. So you could deposit ETH into this vault, get rewards for all these. Yeah, see the TVL is around 2x higher right now. You could deposit a Bitcoin related asset if you want rather have like Bitcoin exposure rather than ETH, or you could actually deposit USD stablecoins. Um, so I think Hyperliquid will retroactively reward users for the Hyper EVM activity, or there'll be a point system in the future if there isn't one already. And then when you route into this vault, it actually uses Layer 0 and Stargate. Um, so potential additional airdrop positioning as well. And this is basically like, hey, I have some idle ETH. I can deposit it in this thing. I can like potentially get exposure to all these. Um, and then you just deposit it and that's it. Two main caveats is this is on ETH mainnet, so the gas will be higher, but gas is like nothing right now. It's like 1, right? If it's under 5, like basically the gas fees are now negligible. Uh, can you deposit UETH? Let's check. Here are the accepted assets. I don't think so. It'll show it for me. CMeth, the stake stones, so stake stones, Kelp DAO, we got Renzo, we got EtherFi, Swell here, Swell L2, Lido, and then just plain wrapped ETH. So those are the quote unquote eligible assets. And then if we go into Bitcoin, basically all of the Bitcoin LST. So Pump, Solve, Lombard, this will be Coinbase, Stakestone. I think this is EtherFi, yeah, eBTC, Swells, and then just normal wrap BTC. And then here we have USR, USDT, and USDC. So that's kind of that vault. The other main caveat is deposits are subject to 30 days lockup, um, which is pretty normal. So basically, don't deposit a whole bunch if you need like liquidity from that in the future. I think I deposited like one ETH in the ETH vault because I was just like extra ETH. I forgot to sell basically. That was in a wallet. Yeah, I'll send my Twitter in the chat. One sec. There we go. So I post like airdrop content if that interests you. Yeah, and follow for more that type of thing. So that's like an ETH based farm. That's like a Hyper EVM based farm. Wanted to touch on that because it's kind of its own thing. I'll kind of touch on the smaller, shorter ones, and we'll kind of move on from there. So next one is the Kaido Yapper rewards. Yeah, so X return you typically see on these. So it varies a lot, right? You're basically making educated guesses, and I would say the biggest risk with airdrop farms is you essentially have no control over how the distribution's done, right? So if the team wants to be like, yo, we're only giving you like 1%, we farmed you for a year and a half, thanks for the fees, bro, here's like $2, that can happen, and it has happened, right? Or, maybe they reward, or they're like, they farm a bunch of it themselves and they sybil their own project and like their VCs sybil their own project because they know the criteria and they just get like a bunch of tokens, right? Or they just don't reward the early users at all and they basically like farm them for like a bunch of attention and fees. So saying that, it's also important to know when you should be rotating out. Like, fuck these guys, I'm done getting farmed, my time and capital is better spent somewhere else. I've got like some points, but I'm not like bullish on the like. Let's say you're like you get into whatever this thing, and they release like their 15th, or their fifth like points campaign or season, and you're like, bro, I'm out, right? And rotate that into something else. I think generally like green flags are like they have a very defined timeline. Like, hey, there are X amount of points that are going to be distributed over this amount of time. This is the end date. That's a good thing because essentially it kind of caps the amount of points that can be given out, which like limits the dilution that you're going to get on your end. Um, and it kind of gives you an idea of how many points are in circulation, so you're going to actually like do calculations on the value of the airdrop potentially. Yeah, they're kind of like lottery plays. Um, I wouldn't say lottery. I would say it's more so you're essentially taking like an educated bet, right? Like a lot of these you earn like yield and like other rewards as well. But you're not like buying a lottery ticket in that sense where if you spend the money, it's gone, right? Obviously, there's smart contract risk or whatever, but most of the time, you'll be able to get most of your money out if you want to rotate it. So it's not like you put your money into the vault and it's gone, right? Forever or whatever, unless you're doing certain strategies like buying like Pendle YT leveraged assets, but that's like different. But yeah, general and sometimes you'll like if you're trying to farm a perp dex, you'll pay fees or whatever. But most of the time, if you're like, this isn't worth my time or money, I'm gonna rotate out. You can get like your money out, right, and rotate it into something else. But it is a lottery in the sense that you don't know if the team's gonna, you know, juke you or not, right? Or do a bad airdrop, right? So let's say to answer your question at the end, really bad airdrop would be, basically you get less than what you've spent on fees or time. Yeah, I'm gonna touch on Kaido and yapping in a sec here. That's kind of what you're seeing on the screen right now. Um, so really bad would be like I spend $50 in fees and I get like $2. All right would be like, you know, I get roughly half back of what I spent. So let's say I put in like, or a quarter. Let's say I put like 1K in liquidity to whatever, and then like I get $250 worth. I'd say a good quote unquote airdrop is like you get roughly the token USD value equal to roughly what you put in TVL. That's like abnormally good, right? So Usual was a good example of this as a stablecoin farm. You got like let's say you had about $1,000 in liquidity farming this like relatively early. You got roughly $1,000 worth of the usual token before they had their whole PR nightmare fiasco in USD zero or in their token like tanked. But if you sold, you had lots of time to sell during when TG happened, right? So like getting $1,000 for just depositing $1,000 worth in a stablecoin is pretty good, right? And not doing anything else. So that's kind of the baseline. And then obviously the upper end of that, right? The high extreme is like something like Hyperliquid or Arbitrum or CK Sing was pretty good. Wormhole was really good, where you're getting several multiples of either the fees spent or the time put in, right? You know, 2, 5, 10x what you put in, but generally those are really hard to predict, right? Because you just don't know. Um, and it doesn't happen super often. Generally, it has to be kind of a any consensus play. And yeah, and like everyone would be like, yeah, I'm a millionaire off Hyperliquid, but like what they don't tell you is like Hyperliquid was around for like 2 years before, they finally had their airdrop, right? So, um, and they're kind of a unique case because they gave out a very large. Jito was really good too. Yep. So Jito was really good because essentially no one was on Solana at the time, right? So that would have been the anti-consensus play, right? Solana was like $20. There was no one farming anything on Solana. So with Jito, if you had like one soul worth, you needed like 100 points, which was like one soul staked worth for 100 days, or like 10 soul for 10 days. Um, you would have hit Jito, right? But because there were so few people on Soul at the time, that's why Jito was lucrative, right? And then because Jito did so well, essentially started like the whole Russian flywheel on the Soul ecosystem. Sorry, I blow my nose there. Um, so yeah, so I would say like it's not super easy or obvious, right? It's always easy and obvious in hindsight, but that's kind of like the idea, right? We try to look for kind of like what's like a relatively good risk reward for our time, and then we kind of go from there. Um, so touching on Kaido. So Kaido actually has a ton of different rewards from all these different projects that essentially give X amount to the top 50 yappers every month, right? So, we got 50K in mantle rewards, 1% of the total supply um, across 6 months, the 30-day leaderboard, 100K in rewards in the next few months, 1 to 5. So this one's probably the biggest one, 1 to 5 mil to all yappers from December last year to the end of this year. Multiplease 10K, Open Ledger 2 million of their token, Polkadot 100K in dot tokens every month, say 25K, 150K. So you guys are probably like, well, why do I care? I don't have, I'm not a big whatever influencer, X amount of followers, blah, blah, blah. I would say, um, if you are good at creating content or you want to kind of consistently post content, you could probably farm these relatively easily. Um, or it's worth trying to see if you can crack into the mindshare leaderboard. especially if you go super hard into something. Let's say you want to be like the Lombard finance dude, right? And you're just only making educational, informative content about Lombard finance. It'd probably be relatively easy to crack into the top 50, right? And then we have a real case example of this here, right? So we have this toxic guy. He's at 4.2K followers. He was at like zero, right, when Kaido started, right? So he went from like zero to like 4K from posting just like how he was getting yaps on Kaido, right? And and now just from like making this post about Kwai, basically like just talking about how why he thinks the Kwai leaderboard is easy to farm and undervalued, and has just made a few posts, right? Nothing crazy viral, right? And he jumped 14 spots in the 3 month time frame, and he's number three on the leaderboard, right? And he basically came from nothing. So even if you have a few hundred followers or a few thousand, and you just keep posting content and do that, um, I think there's a reasonable chance you can crack into it. I'll post his Twitter here. I think he's worth a follow. And I would look into just how he's made a lot of like content around like this is how I've gotten yaps in Kaido, and there's some strategies around there. Mainly like you basically want to go on the leaderboard, find people kind of in the mind share of that specific leaderboard and like try to engage with those accounts, get replies and follows from those accounts, make content around those accounts or around whatever the project is, right? And then try to get noticed by these different accounts, right? Um, so yeah, if you're good at making content, this is basically like quote unquote free. And I do truly believe building some sort of personal brand or social presence is one of the highest leverage things you can do in the space. It is a long-term game, but worth highlighting here just because there are so many different rewards here, and you don't have to be a huge influencer to get a piece of the pie. It's kind of my point. So that makes sense. I'm just reading through the comments here. Cool. Yeah, if you guys have any questions or anything, we'll dig into that. All right, so what we're going to be covering next is kind of like these perp dexes. There's kind of two levels to the perp dexes. So, vaults and deposits, TLDR deposit stables into some form of vault product, usually a perp dex, earn APY and points for having TVL in the vault. So the liquidity providers for all these DEX platforms are essentially taking the bet that even if traders make profits, the trading fees should outweigh that amount. Statistically, traders lose more money than make profits as well. Um, so I'll just show an example because it might be easier. So basically, the way it works, I provide liquidity into usually the core vault on the project. This allows traders to trade. When traders lose money on their trades or get liquidated, um, that gets paid to people providing liquidity in the vault. What I get is I usually get a bunch of points for that corresponding platform and then some sort of APY on providing that liquidity into the vault. Um, that's like the TLDR on like the perp dex, just deposit into the liquidity or deposit into the vault and farm. The other side of that is essentially pushing trades on the platform for getting XP. And then I'll kind of highlight ones that I think are worth doing. So first one is a Rabbit X here. This is on Sonic. And you can get funds onto Sonic easily using something like Jumper Exchange or Relay Protocol. And then if you need Sonic gas, you can use something like gas.zip. All right, so the first step for like any of these things, right, is get funds onto the chain. Right, so say I need Sonic gas, connect my wallet. This wallet's just like a dummy wallet, so there's nothing on it. But let's say I have like, some money on base. It would take $2 of ETH on base and give me $2 of Sonic gas. So then when I go to Jumper and I want to bridge over, just stable USDC to stablecoins, I already have Sonic gas on Sonic chain to be able to do stuff on there. All right, so we can go Sonic. We want Sonic token, base. I'm typing in the word base as a token. And I think base will have a token in the future, but this would be an example, right? And there is like a toggle Sonic button on Jumper itself as well. So that's how you get funds on a Sonic. You then go into RabbitX. You don't want to hit the deposit because this actually funds the trading account, and we don't want to trade on Rabbit. We just want to deposit in the vault. So you're actually going to go to the vault tab here, you stake. You have X amount of USDC you want to put in, and then you get 154% APY, and then you are getting Sonic points, Sonic gems, and then potentially a RabbitX airdrop. But I'm not really expecting that. That would be kind of like icing on top. So that's one example here. And I'll add, so I made this free newsletter article. I'll put that in the chat, and this will basically go over a lot of the things we're talking about here, and we'll have the hyperlinks to it. So like we scroll down here, some of these things, Advantis and Superform I talked about live stream last month. Right, so here, RabbitX Vault, have a link to the Twitter here, and then a link to the Vault. And yeah, basically just all the URLs are here for those that are interested, and it's kind of aggregated in one place. And yeah, newsletter's free. I don't post a lot on here, like 1 to 2 times a month. Most of the stuff I post is on Twitter, but has all the URLs there nicely aggregated, so worth bookmarking if you forget what to do exactly. All right, so the next two we're going to cover is Paradox and Advantis. So the very TLDR. So the way I look at like most of the perp dexes aren't worth like there's a ton of perp dexes, right? The ones I'm highlighting have been like filtered a lot. The way I look at it is I basically deposit TVL in the vault for the passive approach, and then if I'm more bullish on the project, and then usually I outline why, then I'll actually like push trade volume, pay some fees, that type of thing. And the ones that we're going to be highlighting that I think are worth pushing volume is Backpack, and then Paradox, and then Advantis. All right, we'll go over Backpack first because it's the one I'm most bullish on. So why you should be farming Backpack. They raised 37 mil, valued at 120 mil. They did lose 14 mil that in the FTX crash. The beta phase recently finished, so season 1 started March 21st and will last 10 weeks. So we're in like the third-ish week right now, but it's not too late IMO. They bought FTX EU, and basically they have this special license that lets them serve the EU demographic. Manlats are still kind of top NFT on Solana. So here's kind of like the point here. 10 mil points distributed to users weekly. How points are allocated specifically is a black box / constantly changing, which is what Hyperliquid did, and this is good IMO because essentially it makes it more difficult to game or abuse. So 50 mil points were retroactively given to 475K users, which is a lot, right? Which is around 105 points on average per user. But it's easier to get points now as there's only around 20K users, right? Points are updated every Friday. And then how to maximize points. So I took this article by Crypto King 08 who kind of went through like user statistics. So very TLDR. This is me just explaining like how you get points. Basically, the best strategy right now is to mix borrowing using stablecoins with spot trading. And basically someone borrowed roughly 1 to 2K with 50K in spot volume, and they got 2,000 points in a single week. And this only cost them $1 in fees, allegedly. Um, right? And then if we, 2,000 is obviously a lot more than, the 100 that goes passively to kind of the retroactive backpack users or whatever, right? Um, and $1 is very low. So, like, what is this? I guess the big caveat is you have to KYC on backpack. So either people hate this or this is actually an advantage to you because it essentially lowers the user pool and filters it to a much lower concentrated user base, so it's more plus EV for you. Um, and yeah, so or you can use like a Palau. If you guys don't know what a Palau digital ID is, I would look into that. But it basically lets you KYC, if you're from a country that, if your default identity from a country doesn't allow it or restricts you. I'm gonna see if I can find the Palau. Yeah. So I wrote a whole. Oh, that link is wrong. I wrote a whole thread on it here a while ago, 2 years ago. Basically goes over it, like what it is, how it works. But basically you pay Palau $250 a year for an ID, and it lets you KYC with it. Um, it looks something like this. And basically, a bunch of exchanges accept it. And yeah, so that's like a KYC alternative. So what will we do on a backpack? Um, Basically a combination of the borrowing and lending and spot volume. Um, and we can borrow and lend stable coins, right? So we can lend X amount of USDC and then borrow USDT. And the reason we don't want to lend or borrow necessarily these other assets is because they're more volatile and we potentially would get like liquidated on what we borrow, right? So this is kind of like the TVL deposit passive version on Backpack is like this lending or borrowing, right? So in this person's example, they're borrowing 1 to 2K worth, so you would probably have to provide 2K worth because you can't borrow as much as you provide, right? So if I provide like 1K worth, I'm only probably going to be able to borrow like $800 worth. So whatever you want to provide, lend and borrow, and you're comfortable with, do that. Um, there's probably, yeah, there is a cap, but it seems like it's still reasonably open by 25%-ish. So that's that. And then for volume, we're going to push spot volume. The reason is everyone does futures volume, right? But you are at more risk for liquidation if the price goes up and down, or just losing like funds in general, and you're paying more fees, right? But if we do spot, you don't have to deal with that basically. And from the testing article, you only earn around 20% less for pushing the same amount of volume in spot compared to perps, which IMO is well worth the trade-off. Um, so that's the idea, right? Basically, provide 1 to 2K in liquidity, borrow roughly at least 1K ideally, and then push 50K volume. So you just be like, hey, I just want to buy sold USDC. Wait like a few minutes, right? Don't like wait 10 seconds and then trade it back so you don't get filtered or flagged as like a wash trader or a civil. And then just swap back, right? And push volume that way. Um, and then in this example, they had like 50K. Maybe you want to do less. But the idea is like the points are relatively easy to get right now, and if they're only costing you $1, even if this was $10, that's pretty good. Um, so yeah, I think for all those reasons, and I think Backpack's been around so long, people just kind of forgot about it, like that like they're gonna have a token, right? It's just a matter of when. And this is kind of like their first quote unquote like official season of it happening. So yeah, I think that's why I'm bullish on Backpack, or I think it's worth pushing on Backpack. I want to highlight this tool Not sponsored by them or anything, but essentially they let you automate backpack volume. So what you do, this is like a bot. You basically take the private key out of the hot wallet, right? Which means like basically in any automation tool, you want to take like your hot wallet or your burner wallet or your degen wallet. You take the private key out of that, you put it into a tool or a bot, and it essentially pushes volume and does trades for you. I've used them for um, doing LPing on Meteora to earn fees. Um, Team constantly pushes up updates. They're really good. I think you need one of their NFTs um, to get access to it. I think it's like around a soul or a soul and a half right now. Um, if anything, just check out the Discord, ask questions, um, see if it interests you. I've used it before. It helps. I might use it to push backpack volume on the hot wallet. I haven't really decided yet. But yeah, not sponsored, but I've used them, and they're not a scam, basically. So that's some filtering already done for you. Um, so wanted to touch on that. The next one is Paradex. So why farm Paradex? So people think they're late to Paradex, right? Because there has been a season 0 and 1, but that only had 5% of the supply allocated to it. But what people don't realize is in the docs, they literally tell you 15% of the whole supply is going to only season 2, and it ends in July, right? So there's still like time. I think this started around 2 months ago, right? So there's only around 30K users. Most of them fall within the 1 to 2K points range, which is around 100K in volume pushed from my testing. So that's like taking a 10x leverage on $1,000 10 times, right? 10 because $1,000 10x leverage, 10K, do that 10 times 100K. So it's not that much. In terms of how much it could be worth, TLDR at a 250 mil FDV, it'd be 34 cents per XP or $1.36 XP per XP at a bill FDV. I think 250 mil is very reasonable considering we look at like other similar protocols here. Just looking at volume and open interest, they're essentially behind, they're ahead of, basically everything in the 250 mil FDV range. And then even in drift, they're like comparable in volume and just at a bill FDV. So I think 250 mil is very reasonable. Um, and very similar thing. Basically, the two main ways to farm it is push volume. You pay some fees during it. Ideally, if there's a trading campaign going on, push more volume during that. And the other one is deposit into the Gigavault. It is capped right now, but sometimes, whales withdraw or whatever, and there's like, 100, 200K that gets open. So if this gets open in the future, um, I would get some TVL and on that. I did kind of heavy on this because I wanted to be in the cap, so I have 4 to 5K in the vault. And then I'm going to push 100K to 250K volume at least. The goal is at least 2 to 3K XP. And possibly have a second wallet that does less trading and mainly just has stables in the Giga wallet. And then, yeah, I have referral codes that save you on trading fees for those that are interested. Generally, all my referral codes are either the word insight or insightful. So yeah, you can like input that in manually on wherever. Usually it's on the points page somewhere, right? Or on the refer page, and then, apply a referral code. Or that's to apply for affiliate program. But um, yeah. So that's why we're pushing kind of volume and putting time into Paradex. It's kind of like the number 2. Number 3, Advantis. Similar thing. Less money in the vault. It's relatively underfarmed. Same type of thing. Like with like 100K volume, you could, and a lot of these you don't have to do forever, right? You could be like, yo, I just want to hit 100K volume. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with my points. I don't want to trade here anymore. Um, I'm good, right? And then you just kind of don't trade anymore. The way I would look at these is basically if you're gonna push or trade volume anyway, instead of like trading on like a Coinbase or a Binance for perps, right, or spot, you might as well do it on these tokenless platforms, right? um, because you're getting points and potentially, rewarded lucratively for doing what you would do anyway. Right? That's kind of how I look at it, right? Or you can like quote unquote go delta neutral and hedge, right? So let's say, I want to take a 2x ETH short on Advantis. I could go then take a 2x ETH long with the same amount of notional volume on Paradex or another platform, right? So technically, you don't really lose money in either way because if the price goes up on one platform, you're losing money on one platform, but you're saving money on you're making that money back on the other one, right? Or a lot of these, you can just set like a really tight stop loss, right? Or whatever, right? So like 2%, right? And then if it ever hits these, it says like, hey, I'm only losing this amount, or you know, whatever percent, right? And then you don't have to like stare at the screen. But the main takeaway is you don't want to just immediately open the trade and then close the trade, right? Right. So you have to leave it open for 5 minutes ideally. And then if you set like these tighter stop losses, you can kind of like walk away from the computer and like be good, right? And and if you lose or make money, you're kind of good on that. So that's kind of how I look at that. Yeah, Advantis backed by Coinbase. It's only like 20 or 30K users. I think they have 4 mil in funding. Relatively underfarmed for a lot of the similar reasons as the other perp dexes. So hopefully that makes sense. What's your take on Drip? It's under Jupiter. Any tips on it? Haven't looked into Drip. It hasn't been like interesting or appealing enough to me. They've been around forever. It just seems too grindy. I don't know. Like it's like collect all these random things and NFTs, and there's just like no clear way to farm it, and I don't have a good insight onto like what the competition or user pool is like. So personally, I just haven't gotten involved in it. Um, I'm gonna look, see if I can find anything in one of my resource channels. Uh, yeah, it just seems like too manually grindy, basically. That's kind of my verdict on it, right? And it's not clear how I can stand out among users or do well in the point system. So I just haven't gotten involved in it really. Um, all right, another stablecoin play. So, so how do these stablecoin play like farms work? Basically, you mint their certain asset or stablecoin, and then you essentially use that in different DeFi applications, and that's how you maximize your points, right? So this one is for Resolve Labs. Their stablecoin is USR, their core stablecoin product. This part isn't super important, the RLP part. So the brain off strategy is to just buy the USR Pendle and LP on base and hold. The reason is you'll get most of the points with this that you could possibly get, and you'll get a base on-chain footprint, right? So um, we go kind of to the Resolve website. I'll just show you kind of what it looks like because they all are basically the same. Right? So, you know, you mint our USR token, and you can do it on different networks, or you can swap into it doing a DEX, and then it will show like, hey, if you just hold USR on base, it's 30 points per $1. If you hold it on ETH, it's 30 points per $1. If you do this, it's that, right? That type of thing. So as we can see, it basically caps at 45 points as like the highest activities. We don't want to buy YT assets That's basically on Pendle, because that's basically you buying a leveraged points version of, yeah, Hyperlend and Phoenix are um, protocols on like the Hyper EVM that we touched in the Mizu Vault earlier, Sorvo. Not sure that's what you're referring to, or if you're asking about those specifically. Um, so instead of like buying the leveraged YT asset, we buy basically the LP asset. What's the difference? Basically, you get less points, but your principal is not worth zero at the maturity date. So basically, it's less. You're getting less. You're taking a less. You're going for less points, less leverage points, but you're not losing your capital on top of it, right? Um, so how does this work? The no-brain strategy is buy the Pendle LP on USR and just hold it, and you'll get points that way. Am I farming? I'm only farming them through the Mizu vault. Just time's sake. I'll probably not make nearly as much as if you dig into them. Specifically, Sorvo, I'd be interested to see. You said you're farming them heavy. What does that mean exactly, right? Are you pushing volume, providing liquidity? How much? How often? If you could put that in chat, that'd be great. Just to see what the baseline is for you there. Um, but yeah, so just go to the Pendle page. I have it in the article here. Um, or you can manually look it up. Just, you go to Pendle, search for USR, make sure it's on Base if you want to do Base Network. They also have it on ETH. Just make sure you're buying the LP version, not the YT. And then you just swap into any asset directly into LP USR. So that might be USR in your wallet. Maybe you just have USDC on Base. You're just looping. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you could probably loop like up to 3 times probably. Um, I'm guessing reasonably before it gets a pain to unwind. Swervo. Um, but yeah, so you just whatever asset you have. If you have USR, there'll probably be less slippage, right? Depending on your size, right? It will tell you ahead of time. So basically no slippage, right, in USR, but maybe if we pick like USDC, the slippage is a bit worse. We'll see. Yeah, basically it's unchanged. Maybe if we do something like die and put in like 10K, see it probably, yeah, so $5 in slippage. So like pretty good. That's like doesn't get that's like really good. So I think they'll do great. Their TVLs are good. New Hyper-EVM growth statistics are very good. Hyperlearn has relationship with Aave. Yeah, I'll look into them and see if it's worth digging into myself. The my caveat I would say is lending and borrowing protocols in themselves have historically not done very well, like ever. So that would be my caveat. Um, yeah, but like that being said, if there's like other compound stuff on top of it, um, it's worth doing, right? Like I loop, like I loop, like I go, I use init, and I'm not bullish on init themselves because they've been around for fucking forever, right? But I use them for the neutral FBTC loop hook because it, it, I want BTC exposure because I don't have as much compared to ETH, right? And FBTC gives me sparks for the Mantle campaign, so I'm earning potential FBTC rewards, right? And then I can like leverage that up a bit automatically, and it's super quick, right? So instead of me, yeah, and farming the hype airdrop as well for sure. But for me, instead of having to go borrow, lend, borrow, lend, borrow, lend, I can just do a hook uh, in FBTC, and it does it all automatically, right? Right, so I can lever up 1600 into 4K worth. That gets me a bunch of points for the Sparks campaign. I have BTC exposure, which I'm cool with. It's neutral, so I don't, if BTC goes down, it's whatever. Um, and I use it for that, right? So There are good examples, but I'm not like I don't think Init's gonna have a very lucrative token, even though I'm also getting Init points while I'm doing this. Most of my chips are on hype having another airdrop. That does look fire. Yeah, so I my caveat with like hype is I would say if they're gonna have an airdrop, it's not gonna be for a long time because yeah, everyone's like yeah they have whatever 20 or 15 more percent of the supply to give out, but because they had an airdrop like 5 or 6 months ago, it's probably not gonna happen for like at least another 6, 8, 12 months, I would say. All right, so that'd be my caveat there. Right, or maybe you go super heavy into the hype sort of right now, and then you're like, yo, I'm good. I've been in here super early for a while. I went in heavy. I'm gonna de-risk, right? Like maybe there's a smart contract exploit. You don't want to lose all your money, or there's other decent opportunities that you can want to put your money into to like diversify, quote unquote, right? And then you hedge. That's the other thing I think is like you're basically hedging, right? By going in different protocols or different wallets too, right? So maybe Advantis sucks, but because I also went into Paradox and Backpack with roughly the same amount of size and maybe a second wallet instead of just one, then it doesn't matter if Advantis did horribly because I also went into Backpack and Paradox and those outperformed, right? Instead of me just not doing any of the three and just going like all into Advantis and it underperforming, right? Because again, you're essentially subject to whatever the team does, right? And if they screw you over, then you just have to eat it, right? So you have to quote unquote hedge by essentially diversifying between like protocols or the wallets as well, right? So usually maybe I'll do, one high quality wallet that has like 3K, 4K TBL, and then maybe I'll do another wallet that's like 500 to 1,000. Um, it's not a big pain to like set up and manage. And then maybe they reward the smaller people just as much as like the 3K wallet, right? And I've like double dipped essentially for 1/3 of the capital uh, cost or deployment, right? So that's how I kind of look at it. Um, so yeah, resolve by the LP USR. If you want to get out of it, you just click exit, and then you can sell your LP USR back into whatever asset you want. It's going to pick USR by default. You're right. My only hedge right now is me making money off the EVM products, so I'm making money while waiting for the next hype airdrop. Yeah, I would say like you have to hedge or be cautious or assume you basically have to assume you're gonna get screwed over, so that if that scenario plays out, you aren't subject you aren't like you don't take all the downside risk, right? So big things like opportunity cost, right? That's like more than kind of it's like the biggest cost in the entire crypto niche, right? Is opportunity cost, whether that's and that comes in the form of time and capital, right? So, um, yeah. So if you want to sell your USR, you will have a bit of like PT and YT, maybe when you buy the LP, so you lose like a tiny bit of money. Like maybe like five 5% or less. Um, but again, the way I recommend is like put in like a small amount so you're comfortable with how it works. Try like going in and out of the farm, like zap in LP, check the next day. Okay, I'm getting points on resolve. It's working. Can I exit? Okay, let me try exiting. Okay, it works. Okay, now instead of $100, I'll scale up to 1,000, that type of thing. Because like, yo, I'm comfortable with this. I know how it works. That type of thing. That's kind of how I recommend going about any farm, really. Uh, but a lot of these follow very similar playbooks. So once you kind of do like one or two, a lot of similar things in the same niche are essentially the same thing. So that's how I kind of look at it. Next thing, level USD, basically the same thing as Resolve, same type of idea. Um, yeah, by the LP level USD. This one is, I think I have stats on it here. Uh, yeah, let me actually check. So I have, let me check my notes. So I put 3K into the LP level USD around 2 weeks ago, and I'm rank. You guys can't see this on a different monitor and wallet. I'm rank 3,000. I can bring up the level points page here though. I'm rank 3,200 out of 15K. So again, goal is roughly top 20, 30%. So I'm in the top 20% in 2 weeks with 3K, right? And 3K is probably more on the higher-ish end, but with these stablecoin plays, I don't feel too terrible going in a bit bigger, and you kind of need to early on to catch up, like in the points stuff. Um, but again, like relatively low user count. Um, and again, like we see all the different ways you can get level points. But if we see here, right, LP level USD, 40x, which is the highest possible option we see here, right? And then we can just, again, just sell out of our LP level back into level USD or whatever asset. It's basically the exact same thing as Resolve, except you're just doing it for a different protocol. And then I would say the main thing you have to know is once this expiry date hits, you'll have to rotate out into like a new pool when that goes. So either set a date in your calendar or make a note like on your spreadsheet, um, so you remember to rotate out because you might stop earning points if you're not in the new Pendle pool when that happens. And the big thing is this is underfarmed because it's only available on ETH mainnet, right? So people like to not pay gas fees, but since gas is so low, I think it literally cost me like $6 to like mint level USD and then like swap into this and then swap out potentially. So it's really cheap. Obviously, if gas is like 30, 50, 100, you don't want to be paying like $300 to do that, right? But because it's ETH mainnet, generally the competition's a bit lower or a lot lower because, people don't want to pay the gas fees. But since gas is literally as low as it can possibly be right now, um, and it's probably going to stay that way for a while, we'd keep it that way. Or that's it. That's an advantage that you guys can utilize to your advantage. All right, what do you guys think? You guys good for now, or do you want to go over a soul farm real quick, or we can save that for the next live stream there. All right, cool. I think we'll save it. Um, since I'm not seeing anything from chat, so I think we'll wrap it there. That's about an hour, including the 10-minute delay. um, yeah. Okay, cool. Are you in any airdrop communities? We can save it for the next stream. Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, in terms of airdrop communities, I have some. I'm a part of some. I've been in kind of the space for a while. I'll um I'll add some accounts. Wait, I might have some like Telegram channel or two I can put in the chat if they're open. Um she's still gonna show up on this. Okay, yeah. Kate has a great airdrop channel. I'll put that in the chat. Top three airdrops to farm that aren't super diluted with a ton of users. I guess the ones I mentioned, right? Um, I'd say backpack if you're willing to KYC is a good one for all the reasons I mentioned. The stablecoin ones are just like so easy to set up and do because you just have to buy the Pendle LP. If you talk about Telegram airdrops, something like Moonbix and more. Next, honestly, the Telegram airdrops have been like not worth it. Um, Mostly they're just you like spamming these clicker games that are like very low quality, very low effort apps that can be easily civilled or botted, and it's generally not worth engaging. Like I think there are some like early ones, like Notcoin and like one other one, right, that kind of started that flywheel, but I don't. Other than that, like Telegram's been dead, right? The Ton ecosystem, kind of for a while, right? They had kind of some turmoil with the founder. They're adding like a bunch of like restrictions on like how you deploy apps and involved in that ecosystem. So it's being hard for builders. Um, Good airdrops in the Sui ecosystem. Yes. Sui is overlooked. I need to dig into it more. But I link Kate's chat in there. She's got a great channel. She pumps out great content. FIP is really good as well. I'll add him in there. I think he has a Discord that he like plugs in at the end of his posts a lot of the time. Um, so I checked that out. Um, like was it Walrus, Deeper Send? Yeah, Walrus did really well. Um, Actually the NS or the name service for Sui did pretty well. Um, Deep and Send were pretty decent. You had to get kind of early in on those. I'm going to link this guy here. Uh, this guy is like the Sui guy for me. He's kind of like the Sui maxi, so he covers a lot of Sui stuff. Um, Let me check my one group real quick. So I know he talked about stuff he liked. So he likes Ica right now. It seems like so. Let me just copy this. I know him. How so? In a good way? I linked his Ica thread there. Um, yeah, it seems to be what he's bullish on, at least from what I can see here. He's bullish on backpack too, um, which is good to see that confluence. Walrus saved every Sui user, he said. It was a gift from Misted Labs. Um, Apparently people are spending 5 to K10 on there's Ica NFTs from what I'm reading here. But yeah, sounds good, brother. See you on the next one, Sorbo. Okay, we'll wrap it up there. Hopefully that was helpful or, insightful to you guys, all pun intended. Um, yeah, I think this was a good one. We got to cover a lot here, after we worked through kind of the technical difficulties, of course. Um, and yeah, well, I've got a couple NFTs of like the Ico ones. How much did you pay for them? All right, don't, yeah, spam those hearts. All right, hopefully you guys found this insightful. This will be posted on the our channel here, so you guys can watch the recording. Yeah, and if you guys have any questions or anything like that, you can try to tag me in the Telegram chat. My handle is Eat Sweet. Okay, so I must be thinking of something else then. My handle is Reverse Insight. It's not insightful on Telegram. I should have my Twitter and all that. If you guys have questions in chat or whatever, you can tag me there. If I see it, I'm happy to respond. And yeah, we'll wrap it there, and I'll see you guys in the next live stream. Thanks for coming out. Cheers.